What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a great one. Today's episode, I'm going to just kind of show you guys my process of going through and getting rods and reels prepared for the season. So I've got about a week from today's date until the season starts down on Lake Kissimmee, or the Kissimmee chain. I think we launch out of Lake Toho. So going out of Toho and fishing the Kissimmee chain. So you guys, I'm going to show you sort of how I break down my equipment, how I prepare stuff. But as you guys can see behind me here, I've got just an absolute pile of rods going on, and some of them over here, a bunch of those that are rods and reels. So basically what I've got going on here is these are all paired up properly, rods and reels. So none of these have line currently. So basically what I did was I went through all of my rods and I selected the actions and lengths and everything that I wanted, and then I paired up the reels accordingly. And so these are going to be kind of some extra rods that I bring with me, and just in case I want to switch techniques, you know, I've got different actions, different lengths, all that good stuff. And I've also got extras in case I end up breaking one of these or something, you know, happens. So that's what I'm up to now. And then in the other room, kind of keeping them separate, that way I know what's done. So in here I've got, these are ones that need baits tied on. I've still got some baits in the boat, and I don't have the boat with me currently, so I'll get all that stuff out of the boat and I'll rig up these rods with baits already lined up, ready to rock and roll. And then the cat is over there sniffing some baits that are already tied on. So this is some stuff that's already tied up, ready to rock and roll and go in the boat. Kitty, let's not bite that frog. So anyway, let's get the cat out of there. Come on, kitty. Come here. There she comes. All right, kitty. And then, as you guys can see, I've got a bin down here with all my line. I've got more line kind of scattered out on the table. And I'm just going through and I'm working one rod at a time. Making sure my line is proper, making sure everything's kind of dialed in as far as that goes. And that's the process. Basically, I just start one rod at a time. And it takes a bunch of time to go through everything and get it all done, but I really think it's the best way to do it because it allows me to make sure everything is perfect. I inspect, you know, everything about the rod and the reel. And as I go through it, I, you know, make sure the line's proper. And I've had, you know, numerous different techniques for keeping track of, like, let me set this down. So I've had numerous different techniques for keeping track of, like, line size on rods and reels. And kind of what I've come up with this year, and I don't know if it's going to work great or not. I'm just kind of testing it out and trying it. But what I'm doing, taking just some blue, like, painter's tape and a Sharpie, and I'm just writing on here, let's say, I don't know what the next rod I'm going to spool up is. I think maybe 12 pound on like a jerkbait rod. So I'll just write on here 12 pound. And then what I was doing with it, I'll show you guys when I get to the next rod what I'm doing with that little label, I guess you would call it. So anyway, let me grab a rod, put some line on it, and I'll show you guys what I do with that. And yeah, I just kind of want to show you guys this process. I know it's pretty basic. You know, you guys probably know how to put line on a rod and reel, but when you're doing it in this kind of quantity and you got this much equipment, it's definitely a different process than just spooling up one or two rods. So I'm going to grab another rod and start spooling some line up. Gotta have the old pencil. Stick it through your spool. This is just a big old spool of Phoenix Hydro Braid. And stick it through there, and boom, I put that between my knees. There's different ways to do it. This is a super simple old school way to do it. There's machines, there's all kinds of different, you know, techniques, different tools to use, but when in doubt, can't go wrong with the old number 2 pencil. So anyway, gonna grab a rod and put some line on there. All right, guys, I'm about to put this cat outside. She's going psycho. She's trying to grab the line. She just grabbed the rod and like yanked down on the tip of my jerkbait rod. And can't be having that. So I'm gonna put this cat outside. Cat, come here. You wanna go outside? You wanna go outside? You excited to go out? You ready? Come on. Oh yeah. Rain kind of stopped. Pretty cold, isn't it? It's definitely cold out here. All right, kitty. Have fun. I'm going to spool up some rods. All right. Put her out. Now I can actually spool up without having to worry about my stuff getting yanked on. All right, guys, so let's do this without having to worry about the cat now. All right, so typically speaking, I go through the first guide or two when spooling up. You guys will see that I have Phoenix Seagar Red Label. I don't work with Seagar. I also don't work with Sunline, but those are the two brands of line that I use. I really like the Red Label, believe it or not. It's an inexpensive fluorocarbon, but it performs really well, and especially with reaction baits. You know, I spool up pretty often with like a crankbait or a jerkbait. You're putting a lot of, you're putting a lot of force on that line when you're ripping it with a jerkbait, or when you're reeling really, really fast and hitting it, your crankbait off of stuff. And so Red Label works great. I mean, I use it a lot, actually. I've trusted it for a long time now, and I've had very, very, very minimal issues with Red Label. And for the money, it's a good line to check out. So anyway, guys, got my line tied onto my spool. We're just gonna start cranking this stuff on. So this is some 12-pound. I'm gonna put this on my jerkbait rod. Pretty simple process. Don't need to show you guys how to do this. I'm sure you know. If you don't, I'm sure that there's YouTube videos out there how to spool a reel up with some line. One thing I will say, I don't see a lot of, I don't know, I don't watch any spooling videos, so I really don't know if people talk about this or not. But one thing that I will tell you is when you spool a reel up right out of the pack, or any reel for that matter, at any point in its life, it's going to want to naturally probably build line one side or the other of the spool. So like if you just reeled this on, without really guiding it, so to speak, it's just going to want to kind of build up more on one side than the other. And I personally don't like that. I want my spool to be nice and even all the way across. And so one way to kind of remedy that is you want to guide the line as you spool it. So what I mean by that is I just naturally do it. I've done it for so long that it's like second nature to me. But as you watch the line go over the spool, the line guide and the worm gear are going to pull the line guide, across the spool naturally in order to fill the spool up. So what you want to do is as the line guide is moving with the worm gear one direction, you kind of want to pull that same direction with your fingers just slightly. So like I keep my right hand, because I'm right hand dominant, up here on the rod, and I kind of pinch the line between my index finger and my thumb, and I guide my line towards that direction that the line guide is going. So what that does is it forces that line to spool all the way up against the edge of the spool, and then as you go the other direction, you do the same thing. So I'm constantly kind of swapping back and forth. You guys can kind of see my pointer and my thumb going like this, pulling the line back and forth across the spool. And what that does is it just gives it a little bit more of a guide to fill the spool up all the way nice and even, all the way up against the edge. And you don't get one high side and one low side. And you also don't get, like, sometimes certain reels, that line guide won't go all the way quite to the edge of the spool. Like, it'll get real close, but you'll end up with a teeny little gap. And what happens is that line, as it fills more and more and more, it'll start to slip down into that gap. And it just doesn't cast as good. It just doesn't perform as well on the water. So that's definitely something that I recommend. You also, when you do this, you want to keep tension on the reel or on the line, and that's going to allow that line to spool up, nice and tight on that spool. So when you go out there and fish, you're not going to have loops and loose line kind of coming off the spool, which can cause issues. So what I recommend is tighten your drag up. I keep all my drags on my reels loose when I'm storing them, so you don't need to crank it all the way down or anything, but tighten it up just enough to where you can put a decent amount of pressure on there. And I try to make sure there's no loops, or I want all my line nice and straight too. So as you guys could kind of see right there, I'm like clicking my reel into gear and pulling some line off because I gave it a little bit of slack. And so what that'll do is create like a angled piece of line I want it all nice and straight. I don't want anything out of line. So you guys can see as I go, I'm guiding it, and it really, it's pretty simple. And you really don't need to pull much. Like as I'm doing this, I'm realizing that I don't pull it really that much. You just kind of use your fingers as a guide. You're not yanking it. And if you notice the middle of the spool's not getting enough line, you can slow down on pulling it. And you kind of just use your fingers just to work it and fill that spool up how you need it to be filled up. And as you do each reel, you'll notice that each one of your reels is probably going to be a little bit different as far as how you need to guide that line. So I like to fill my reels all the way to the brim. And then if you need to, you can always take a couple feet off. But I hate it. You know, I've done it obviously in the past. I've spooled up hundreds of reels, you know, over the years. And it's never good when you go just a little bit short. You can't put line on, but you can always take a little bit of line off. So just go a little bit more than you need, or not more than you need, but just fill the spool up, you know. Don't cut yourself short. It's never good to cut yourself short on line, because then you end up, you know, maybe you're not quite getting the casting distance you want. Or another thing that, you know, if people don't realize is that a full spool of line actually is giving you the exact gear ratio that the reel is saying that it is. If you've got a shorter spool of line, like less line on the spool, your gear ratio is actually lower, because when you turn the handle, it's a smaller diameter that's picking line up. So the less line on your spool, the slower gear ratio you technically have, because it's not, you know, you turn the handle and the spool's spinning at the same speed, but it's not as wide to pick line up. So like the wider the spool is, the more line it's picking up. So you want to maximize your reel, essentially, is what I'm saying. And having more line on there is going to maximize that reel's performance. So that's another reason why you want to spool it all the way up. I mean, there's definitely a time and a place for you know, a slower gear ratio. So if that's something that you think you need, I mean, that's something that you can take into mind. So another thing that I do, especially with this red label, you know, like I said, it is an inexpensive fluorocarbon. So it's you know, it comes out of off the spool just fine, and it's good, totally fine. But I like to spray some kind of like line conditioner. This stuff here is real magic. It works fine. Basically, what this does is just reduces memory. It kind of makes the line a little more limp. It just conditions the line. And I do this to all my reels with fluorocarbon before I, you know, really fish with them at all. So I just shoot a couple, you know, like a second or two of that, like a couple spurts of that on the spool, and that kind of soaks down in that spool. And over time, basically what that's going to do is just condition that line before I use it. So what that does, it helps get backlashes out, helps it come off the spool smoother, makes it a little limper, and yeah, just improves the performance of the reel. So anyway, I got that one spooled up. I'm going to use this guy here for my jerk baits. Probably going to throw a, not Simcoe, a Nishine Erie, you know, Erie 115 SD or MD on that guy. So what I like to do, I don't have my jerk baits with me currently. They're in the boat right now. And so what I'll do is I'll tie just a small loop in the end of my line, and I'll hook that loop to my lure or bait hanger or whatever on your rod. What do you call that? Hook hanger, I guess. I got that guy ready to rock and roll. And I always twist my line. I grab it about 2 or 3 guides up, and I just twist my rod, and that just basically sucks all that line down onto the rod, so it's not loose and catching on a bunch of stuff. So what I'll do now is, you guys saw I wrote 12 pound on this little label here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel that off and then just cut it and cut it a little bit more. So basically all that I've got is my little piece of tape that says 12 pound on it. I'll show you guys. So just a tiny little piece of tape. It says 12 pound on there. And so what I'm going to do, and I mean, you can get more detailed if you want to. You could put 12 pound like red L or RL, you know, so you know what brand line it is. But for this purpose, I don't really, you know, that's fine. I know that I'm pretty much using 12 pound red label on my jerkbait. So I'm going to take that, and what I'm doing is I'm taking my reel off of my rod, and I'm just sticking it on the reel seat. So you can see there, I'm just putting that on the actual reel seat of the rod, underneath where the reel sits. And so I don't know if this is going to work real good, but in my head it's going to work. Basically that reel's protecting that sticker from getting too messed up. And then when I need to check what line's on this rod, all I need to do is, do what I just did. Untwist my reel seat, pull my reel off, and I can go, oh, that's 12 pound. And that's really helpful when you have this many rods, because I mean, as good as I am at feeling line and going, oh, that's 12, oh, that's 17, oh, that's 20, the difference between 12 and 15 and 15 and 17, sometimes, I mean, it's hard to tell. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, it's hard to tell. And so it's nice just to reassurance. You just know, hey, that's 15, hey, that's 12. And that way, when you switch rods or switch reels, you know for sure. Or if you're just looking to re-spool and get exactly what you had on there when you were fishing for practice, or you need to re-spool for the next day of the tournament. So just a little tip, something that I thought of. Hopefully it works good. But anyway, that's ready to go. Alright, so I got that guy all ready to rock and roll. Got my rod sleeve on there. I use these in the boat. They prevent your line from catching. They also protect your guides and your tips of your rods. So anyway, I'm not affiliated with any brand that makes these, but they work really well. They keep your stuff nice and isolated so it's not tangling up so bad. So I'm going to go put this in this other room. I mean, I could keep it all in this fishing room, but my fishing room is pretty packed with stuff, as you guys can see. This room is just kind of a catch-all for right now. So anyway, got another rod ready to rock and roll. So I'm just going to repeat that process over and over and over again with all those rods in that room. These are just jerkbait rods, so that's got that 12 pound on there. And as I go, I'm going to, obviously determine what line needs to go on what rods. This is like, I believe that's 16. I could look under the reel seat, but what is that? That's a 7.4 medium heavy. Yeah, that's 16 on there. What do I got on here? 40 pound braid on there. So anyway, this is some 30 pound braid to like a 20 pound leader. That's going to have a prop bait on there. So as you guys can see, I just kind of go through each setup and dial in, the line with the right reel, and make sure the line's in good condition, and replace all that, before each event usually. And then as I get stuff more and more dialed in, as I get baits tied on, I'll put these reel covers on. These ones are Tackle Warehouse ones, but Phoenix Rods makes some nice reel covers as well. And basically what I do is just get everything dialed in with these covers, because what that's going to do is, another thing people don't really think about, or I don't hear many guys talk about, is when you shove 30 rods, 25 rods, whatever it is, in your rod locker, if this spool of line is resting up against this trigger and you're driving for 500 miles, 600 miles, 1,000 miles, whatever it is, and it's vibrating, that spool of line is getting damaged by the trigger on this other rod, the handle on this rod, the drag star on this rod, whatever it is, it's getting rubbed against. And so you may not even notice it when you go out to go fish, but you may set the hook on a fish and break off, with 40, 50, 60 feet of line out and have no idea what happened. So that reel cover just kind of gives you the reassurance that your spool of line is protected and not getting damaged. So you don't really have a lot of room for this line to get messed up when you've got these reel covers and these rod covers on. So that's something that I recommend. It not only protects your gear, but it protects your line. And for me, I mean, the line is my connection to the fish, and so I've got to make sure that that's in tip-top shape. And so that's something that I do, something that I recommend if you're taking this really seriously and you want to maximize your catch, to land ratio, or hook to land ratio. Anyway, guys, I didn't want to make today's video super duper long. Kind of just wanted to throw some information at you guys about how I go about getting some rods and reels ready, what I'm up to right now. Like I said, I leave in about a week to go down to Florida. Super excited to get down there. Can't wait to go catch some big Florida strain bass, hopefully. And phone's dinging off the hook over here. I'm getting some text messages, it looks like. But anyway, guys, yeah, appreciate you watching. Hopefully you learned something. If you did learn something, drop a like or give me a like on this video. If you're not already, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate all you guys that are subscribing. I've got a bunch of new subscribers lately. The channel's been growing little by little, and I appreciate all you guys. I really do, and hopefully you have a great rest of your day. If you're watching this in the morning, good morning. Watching it at night, hope you have a great night. So until next time, guys, catch you later on another episode of Jig Ball Fishing.